All right, hello everyone. I'm Steve Moffett. I'm the treasurer of the Ryalside Civic Association. The RCA is a volunteer-run organization serving all of Ryalside to put on community events and foster citizenship. So we put on such events as the Christmas tree bonfire, the 4th of July parade, Thanksgiving food drives, and much more. Coming up on our calendar is the Easter egg hunt, and in May we have some fellow Ryalsiders hosting a plant swap at O'Bear Park. If you want to make these events happen, consider joining the Ryalside Civic Association and getting involved. You can do that by going to ryalsidecivicassociation.org and join, and come to one of our monthly meetings every second Monday of the month at our building on Eleanor Ave. I want to take a moment to thank, we have John recording from BevCam to share with everyone who's not here. Special thanks to Luigi, who set up all the chairs and set up all the tables tonight. And thanks to the rest of the board who's also here up front for putting together this event. So with the event at hand, we wanted to get on to meeting the candidates for the upcoming primary of the state representative. I'd like to acknowledge that we are without the other candidate, Medley Long. He was invited, but due to a prior conflict, he couldn't make it. But with the primary coming so close and only the Democratic ticket being contested, we just wanted to get this event underway so that you could get that information before then. So we'll work with Medley and whoever comes out of the primary to get some sort of information out for all the candidates, for all of you before then. Yeah, so without any further delay, we're gonna get on to meeting our candidates who are seeking your vote for the primary on April 15th. So for the past few weeks, we've been reaching out to membership to get questions for tonight. So we've gone through those and just streamlined those so that we can keep the event moving along. And just before this, we did a quick coin toss to decide who is speaking first. So we'll be alternating, and Todd will be answering the first question first. And we'll be keeping time up front, so it'll be 3 minutes for the opening and 2 for all the following. So to start, in your current role, could you go over some of the positive impacts you've had on the community, and how do you see being able to make a greater impact if elected to state rep for our district?
So first, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight during the great rain weather, but it's better than the snow that we've had, the cold winter that we had. So first, I want to thank you, Steve, and the board for the Civic Association for hosting this event, as well as the elementary school for opening this up. So I first want to take that moment to thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Todd Rotundo. I am the current city councilor of Ward 1 here in Ryalside and Raymond Farms in Folly Hill. As a city councilor, as a business owner, I've spent 30 years in this community where I've been doing many things to make things positive and good things happen. So the one question that what brings highlight to me is there was a Folly Hill fire several years ago where it was instrumental over the New Year's Eve weekend. Not many people around, but I did reach out to the community and was able to work with the Civic Association to have them start funding. We were able to work with the displaced families to get them in various housing. I worked with Senator Lovely and Representative Paracella. So that's one thing that I really want to just highlight, how we were collaboratively able to work to raise funds to immediately get assistance to the people. And in the aftermath, we got various agencies together to make sure, although we have emergency things in place in the city, what we never really always think about is the humanitarian crisis that people are going through for the situation. So working with the mayor's office and his constituent service person, we were able to work with the American Red Cross, the various emergency agencies, Beverly Bootstraps, and really have a call list that they check in every 6 months to make sure that the list is current. Another thing that I've been able to work with was CADA, which is the Cape Ann Transportation Authority. A lot of people think it's only for the seniors, which it isn't. It's for any resident in the city. At the time, it was not servicing up Apple Village, which is a low-income housing area that needed the service. They were getting it once a week on a Saturday 3 times. With the help of our planning director, as well as the mayor's office and Cato, we were able to actually have them reroute it. And with that, we had done a survey to all the housing authority units to make sure that they were all being serviced properly. The route's been changed. It's a little longer than it needs to be, but that's okay, because what it does now is they move it and they allow these same residents to get into Market Basket and Danvers to get affordable groceries. So we were able to change that system. Thank you. The other thing that I'd like to highlight is my work that we had done with another fellow councilor on getting free parking for our veterans. We were able to allow those who already have license plate, but the other thing is to keep it equitable and affordable for them to just simply have a pass that would allow them a sticker on their windshield, which would bring them actually to the Veteran Service Officer to get additional services they may not be aware of. So this was another opportunity to get the veteran services, the needed services they need. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, and I'll add my thanks as well. I think that's why we get extra time for the first question to fit in the thank yous to the volunteers of the Ryalside Civic Association, to the staff of the school and BevCam, to all of you for being here, and those who are going to watch now or later, and to Councilor Rotundo for running. I think it's really exciting that we have choices in this election, and I am just really grateful to be here. So in thinking about positive impacts I've contributed to so far in my roles here in the community and how I could have a greater impact as your state representative, I really hold two public service roles right now. So as an at-large city councilor representing all 6 wards of the city in decisions that we have to make about city affairs, and as the executive director of the Resolution Center, which is the community mediation center that serves the North Shore, providing conflict skills and services to all of Essex County. And I think some of the impacts that I've gotten the most feedback about and that I'm most proud of contributing to are really, first off, asking the right questions and the hard questions to get more transparency into the city budget, into our infrastructure spending, into just understanding how city government works. I'm really proud of convening a special meeting of the City Council by filing a resolution to really get the council together and provide a space during the teachers' strike for us to hear this group of leaders in our community respectfully and publicly sharing what we were hearing, what we thought might need to happen, that we were ready to play our role, and really create the space and the push for all of the negotiators to get back to the table and reach a resolution to that impasse 24 hours later. I helped drive efforts for an accessory dwelling unit ordinance that has helped homeowners and renters already since it passed a little over a year ago. And in my day job, I get really positive feedback throughout the day that just keeps me in the work and keeps me going. When we do things like help a tenant and a landlord sort through a payment issue and keep someone in their home and a small landlord keeping the income and steady finances that they need, or facilitating a conversation in Lynn just a couple of months ago to help residents inform their city leaders what they wanted to see. And as a full-time dedicated state rep, I could do even more of those things and even better serve our district, being able to get us that same transparency at the state level, helping us navigate state agencies that we all have access to but may not be able to navigate, and really make sure that we have the strong, experienced advocate that we need.
So we'll continue with Councilor Boland leading this question. So it wouldn't be a Ryalside meeting if we didn't talk about the bridge. So what would you like to see being done differently with regards to the Hallwaker Bridge project? And where do you see your role or potential role as a state rep going forward in making sure that the proposed schedule is held to or shortened?
Yes, so like all of you, I would like to see it done. That's what I'd like to see done differently. And I think, there are a few lessons from other projects, And I do have some ideas about how I could help make sure that in the interim, while the project is still underway, the impacts are mitigated for residents across the city, but especially those most impacted here, and to make sure that timeline does not get any longer and does get shorter. So I'd like to see something like what I helped push for with the National Grid project, another extremely painful citywide project. And we were able to require National Grid and their construction team to meet with a committee of residents twice a month throughout the project, and really sit face to face and say, what is going on? Whose car was blocked in, and how loud is the project actually preventing people from working, and what can we do to fix it? They didn't fix everything. It didn't make everything go away, but it made a huge difference and gave residents of Beverly a lot more protections than residents of other communities that have faced similar projects, because we fought hard for that. I would love to see residents included week by week in construction decisions and updates and speeding up that timeline. And I would see my role as state rep as really being constant, persistent, constantly there with MassDOT, pushing hard. Those of you who have watched a city council meeting on BevCam know I can be relentless, and we'll be pushing for more. And really, our state rep needs to be proactive and anticipating what could be coming. So in this case, I think a lot of us got sort of caught reacting. I don't want that to happen again with other major projects in the city.
Well, I know this question very well. Unfortunately, living the pain that you guys are living every day. So, look, we have 5 Bridge Street projects, or bridge projects, the Bridge Street project. We have the Hall Whitaker temporary bridge, the temporary bridge the permanent bridge for Hall Whitaker, and then we have the Kernwood Bridge. So I have been, since the get-go, since this Hall Whitaker was suddenly closed, part of the conversation, I've been working with Paul Stedman from the Mass Department of Transportation, with Representative Paracella, Senator Lovely, as well as Congressman Moulton's office, and as well as the 2 senators. We've been working to push, because this is a multi-layer issue. This is not really where a city pays for the bridge. Some people think we do, but we don't. This is a state-funded, which comes from federal funds. Part of the issue right now that we're having that is pausing and taking so long is we weren't anticipating this bridge to be shut down. We knew it's been deteriorated for years, and that's another situation with infrastructure itself. But what I can tell you is, when we had that first community meeting and the state came and said, we want to just put a bridge over the existing bridge, but it's going to take 10 years, they heard it loud and clear from the community that this was unacceptable. And so by that happening, they came back to us and said, we have a new set of designs. We're going to do a offset of the Hall Whitaker temporary, and then all these other bridges. We have continued holding their feet to the fire. Part of the issue is because it is navigational waters that the Coast Guard has final say. And so the state wants to make sure they're doing their job right. They're crossing their T's and dotting their I's, because they don't want to put all this design work for them to come back and say, go back to the drawing board. So unfortunately, it's taking a little longer, as well as the fact that we have the environmental agencies involved. So we need to make sure that we continue advocating with them, working with Congressman Moulton's office to make sure that their agencies that he's overseen are doing their job from the federal level. The state's already said we can, forego certain things and move the timeline a little quicker. It's still not fast enough, but the other thing that we were able to do as well is the intersections along LH Street, those light signals, they aren't perfect. They've gotten a heck of a lot better because the new technology has been added. That was $500,000 that the state gave the city to upgrade that technology, because although we're seeing the traffic on LH Street, it does push it out. It's pushing it up to Brimble Ave. It's pushing it over to 1A. So this traffic is continually moving out. I will continue advocating. I will hit the ground running with this. I mean, I have been involved with this conversation since the day one it started. I can remember the first time, it was a Thursday afternoon when I got the phone call from the mayor saying, guess what, Hall Whitaker is being closed. And it was disastrous. And we had a lot of conversations with the Civic Association and then eventually with the community. So I will continue advocating that.
One of the other topics that's been coming up a lot in the questions we received was cost of living. So we'll continue again with Councilor Rotundo. What steps do you see our next state rep being able to take to help curb the rising costs in our energy bills?
So sadly enough, it was Channel 5 that found out that we were being overcharged with this, exorbitant prices on our utility bills. Fortunately, our state legislators, as well as Governor Haley's office, went to the Department of Public Utilities, as well as to these utility companies, and said, look you need to come up with something better. We need to give relief to the ratepayers, and that's what they've done, the 10% relief. But on top of that, we do have energy audits that, the Mass Save program, where I would help to communicate as well as walk people through on how to get that with my aide or with other stakeholders within the state, to be able to get the people to let them know and understand that there are programs out there that will help you with light bulbs and things of that nature. But make no mistake, we want to keep an eye on the utility companies to make sure that they're not gouging the ratepayers on this. Right now, we're in very tough times with fuel costs as well as food costs, and as aid is being cut for us. So I will continue advocating and keeping an eye and making sure holding utilities accountable for the money that they're charging to the ratepayers.
All right. Thank you. And I've also been hearing this from a lot of neighbors, experiencing it myself, and we all know that the energy market is incredibly complex, and there are factors at the federal level, at the state level, how companies are sort of pricing. So it's not a simple solution, but some of the ideas I've put out already and would support in this role are looking at capping rate increases during those high usage periods when people are not expecting to get a bill that large. They're just trying to keep the house warm in the middle of winter. I think we need to protect the incentives for energy conservation, even though they are part of the cost to ratepayers, and really protect and expand relief for anyone who's struggling to pay those bills, to seniors on fixed incomes, to expand the programs and help people navigate them. I think when I think about energy conservation, it's a way for us to also all save money, including the utilities, and serve more customers with the same energy we're producing. And I actually learned that in 2003, 2004, in one of my first jobs out of college, helping small businesses and some large businesses work with their energy provider and water utility to implement conservation measures in Northern California, where both energy and water were even more scarce than here. And I saw it work there, and I know we can do better here on that as well. So I think there's a lot of different elements to it. I think we all know that the Department of Public Utilities and Energy Facilities Siting Board do not have the kind of resident voice and inclusion that we are looking for. So just like with the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, we need our representative to be in those rooms sharing our voices and bringing residents along to those conversations.
So I think one of the other main topics from this past year has been our schools, particularly with our teacher strike last year. So Ryalsiders are facing issues with the schools, with getting special education services. Where do you see your role in advocating for a stronger public education system in the state?
Yeah, and I think it's still really raw for a lot of people going through this strike, sort of wherever you landed on what funding is available and what educators and students need. The experience hurt us all, and as someone who works in conflict resolution day in and day out, I think we can and will do better on making sure we're starting from the place of our shared priority to make sure that our kids, all of our kids, are getting what they need. It also obviously highlighted where state and federal funding plays a role in our budget. I think we all got a greater education in education funding. And I hear from all of you, from families across the city, how hard it is to secure and protect the services that our kids need, whether it's an IEP, just getting one in place, getting it fulfilled, can be a struggle. And so, I will advocate for the resources and services that we need. And I've been working with education advocates to understand what will work better. What has changed in education since the pandemic, with what's going on in our economy, in our society. Like, what do our educators really need? And what are they fighting for? How do they think we can raise more revenues? How do they think we can allocate things more efficiently? And have been honored through those conversations to not only get ideas, but build trust, and have been endorsed already by the American Federation of Teachers, Massachusetts. Really excited to work with them. And then just today, the Beverly Teachers Association voted to endorse my candidacy. And it's an honor to be able to work with them on what solutions we can have going forward.
Yes, great question. So right now, Chapter 70 is not working well for any of us. I already know out in the western part of the state, there are legislators out there right now working together to really try to rework it. If elected as a state representative, I would collaboratively work with other North Shore legislators to do the same thing here. We need to rework the Chapter 70, the money that comes into the state. Now, special education has always been one of the biggest expenses for the city. And we need to make sure we rely on it, because those are some of our most vulnerable children that need to make sure they get the appropriate services. I've been involved with the schools since the days my daughter started 20 years ago. I was a PTO president here for 9 years. I know exactly what teachers were looking for and asking for. My daughter's a teacher. She's a special education teacher. I see it firsthand what she's dealing with on a daily basis. I understand what's going on, and I do hear it. So for us, we need to look at the state level and how we can rework the Chapter 70. We're a harmless held district, which means is we don't get a lot of funding each year, unfortunately. So we do need to rework that. That is really the key to it. We know the city gives allocations of X amount of dollars, but as a state rep, we need to make sure that that funding gets better. We know the student opportunity fixed some of the gaps, but not all of the gaps. And I will continue to work with that. I will work with other legislators in the North Shore to make sure that we get our fair share of money to Beverly, because that's what's needed right now.
Thanks. And Councilor Rotundo, we'll start with you, and kind of extending off of that same answer too is what path do you see to bring more money back to the district for those big city budget items like schools and roads and sidewalks and
So, we have to look through earmarks and grants that come to the city. We're fortunate that we've been getting those. Those are things that a state representative goes and helps and gets. That's the things that we'll need for Chapter 70 money, which is the money that funds our schools. The Chapter 90 money, that's what funds our roads and sidewalk infrastructure. We've been fortunate that the Bridge Street project, that is a $14 million project. We got $1 million that the city paid for design to get, that came out of the city budget, but allowed us to get $14 million to do the whole street reconstruction. So that's something where the state legislators worked with the city, and we'll have to continue identifying within the budget other earmarks through the Mass Works projects, grants. Those are how we were able to get the Brimble Ave interchanges done. We're currently working with the state right now. The city's working with the state right now to get additional funding for the Dunham Road, Brimble Ave. And so that's something that we need to keep identifying is what are out there for grants? What do we have out there for additional funding that we can get for infrastructure? We have a lot of infrastructure needs in the state, but specifically in Beverly, we're witnessing it right here in our own little district and ward right here. We're witnessing, like I said, we have 5 projects in Ryalside itself that are going on. We have too many roads that need to be fixed, but we just don't have enough funding coming into the city. So where do we identify that through the earmarks and the grants, which allowed us to do some of the reconfiguration in the downtown area and continue doing paving projects? So that is what I will continually do, is I will continually work with the city, with other legislators, identifying earmarks within the budget, as well as finding grant money to bring to the city to do these bigger projects.
Thank you. So I thought a lot about this and what I think is our next question together, because the way that legislators have been bringing project funding back to the city and our rep now to Beverly and Wenham is going to be a little different over the next few years. We anticipate it's going to be a tight budget. And so, you know, the system of expecting earmarks and grants to continue as they have, we'll need to fight for. And so it's going to take, first of all, navigating the system as it is and being in line for those earmarks and having projects that, you know, fit the criteria, that really match some statewide priorities. But it's also going to mean being a representative who is actively engaged with colleagues on expanding the pie where we need it, on protecting the pie where it might otherwise be cut. So I think, you know, it's really navigating both the way things have been and the way they're going to have to be over the next few years. And so, you know, working in a nonprofit agency, I have a lot of experience looking for funding, state funding, private funding, understanding how large budgets operate and navigating them, you know, attending, presenting at legislative briefings, developing working relationships with our North Shore delegation and with partners statewide, and really being able to navigate the system the way it has been in the nonprofit sector and now in the city council role, understanding where the city has been tapping into those resources, but also thinking about how are we going to adapt going forward and make sure that there are funds there for Beverly to tap into, for the types of projects that we want prioritized.
Thanks. And I guess to continue on with that, so as you kind of noted, there's an expectation that federal funding will be harder to obtain in the next few years. How would you prioritize programs that face major cuts at a state-funded level? How do you kind of balance cutting services versus raising revenues versus dipping into the state pool or you know, our state reserves to pay for those things?
Yeah, so I mean, it is a rainy day, literally and figuratively. And so I think all of the options need to be on the table. In some ways, these are the sorts of economic and political times that reserves are built for, but we can't rely on that to carry us through and give us the kinds of opportunities we want. So it will also take raising revenues creatively, and it will also take prioritizing where programs may need to be temporarily or permanently shifted to save money. And so I'll really prioritize working with all of you to make sure that where there may be cuts, they are not cuts to the programs that we rely on most. And where there is room for more revenues, that we are working on that together. So I've been, again, sort of working with statewide allies to think about what's already being proposed, who is doing the contingency planning, what are the opportunities. So there are things like coalitions working on closing corporate tax loopholes that we still have in Massachusetts that leave money on the table that we need now to maintain the programs that we all rely on. And things like in that prioritization, for me, it's really important that we are prioritizing frontline care, that we are prioritizing those services we rely on. I was disappointed to see, I know they're all hard choices, but in the governor's proposed budget for this year, there are proposed cuts to case managers in the Department of Mental Health. And to me, that is not the first place you go. That's a cost-effective, critical service. I was actually out knocking doors today in this weather and talked to a mom who has used those caseworkers to navigate services for her family. And, you know, this is something that I was already thinking about, but to then, you know, see a neighbor who relies on that service need their representative to stand up in the budget process and fight for that, that's what's motivating me to be here.
So healthcare, education, and infrastructure are the three major things that affect us on a daily basis. We know that conservatively that the state legislators are working on a 2.2% projection because they know that that our Medicaid system is in jeopardy because of the federal level. We also are aware that, as we've seen, the Department of Education is looking to be dissolved, but I did read something today that they're not looking to cut the funding for Title I through IV, which directly affect our schools. So that was something of a positive note, believe it or not, to find something in the silver lining in the cloud. So right now, the biggest thing is, listen, we're going to have to really work hard to scrap for every dollar we bring back to the city, because that's what a legislator is going to have to do. The state representative is going to have to go to the State House and is going to have to scrap for every dollar that is available, whether it's for the healthcare system, whether it's for our education system and infrastructure. Those dollars are going to become smaller and smaller. We know that. We know that the rainy day fund is available for catastrophic reasons. We hope not to have to get into that system, but there may be points that we may have to dip into the rainy day fund in order to fund those. We also need to relook at some of the formulas that we're funding for the right to, the right to shelter home. That's $1 billion that's being funded. That's being taken away from infrastructure, as well as being taken away from our veterans, and as well as housing. That's real dollars that we're doing. That law was created in the '80s for a good reason, but unfortunately, right now it's not doing what needs to be done, and it's taking a big chunk of money from the state right now. That's the city and other municipalities could actually be benefiting from.
Thanks. And I guess starting with Councilor Rotundo on this one, to get into a bit more specifics, do you support House Bill 1405 establishing Medicare for all in Massachusetts?
So I definitely support health care for all. Fortunately, we had the universal health care created back in the early 2000s, which provided health insurance for most people, not all, but for most. Now, this particular House budget that's being, the H 1405 that's being created, is also looking for sort of a single payer system. Now, that's a big, big change in how we would be funding it, which means is we need to find real money to fund this system. From what I've read so far, some of it will fall on the business owners or as well as the employees. And what concerns me with that is, right now, that our business sector, our small businesses especially, who actually employ 80% of most people, of our employees are 80% by our small businesses, would be affected by this. I definitely want to look into it because it's something that I think is worth investigating. I just can't speak enough to it right now because they're still developing. It was just introduced back in February. But definitely for healthcare, universal healthcare, absolutely. Why wouldn't we want that? That's something, a simple right of people that should have a right to have affordable health care. And unfortunately, the healthcare system needs to be revisited altogether. It's not just the insurance companies, it's also the hospitals and it's the middle managers. So that's the big thing right now, is we really need to look at the whole healthcare system itself, not just the specific single payer system.
Great, and I love a detailed question, so it will be difficult for me to stay in the 2 minutes. I think this is a great example of kind of how I would approach legislation, because I really see the role of our state rep as someone who can comb through the thousands of pieces of legislation that are filed at the beginning of the term and say to Beverly and Wenham, hey, these are the ones that look like they would most directly impact the things that I'm hearing from you, or here are the things that I have big questions about. Let's talk through them together. Or here are the things that seem to have the most momentum right now. Let's weigh in before they get too far. Or here are the things that seem to be dead in the water but seem important. Can you help me get them moved? When you hear Medicare for all, it's like referring to a national term. There's a lot to it. What's in that bill? It's 35 pages. Constructing a single payer system that would be like first in the nation, universal health coverage, quality of care, really exciting stuff that personally I want to support. I want to see us get there. And it's exactly the sort of bill that I would want to hold a town hall meeting about and bring in some healthcare experts, bring in folks from Beverly Hospital, from different types of care providers. They're talking about having integrated physical, mental, behavioral health, substance use, treatment programs all under the single payer system. How would that work for us? How would that work for the providers in our community, the doctors that we see? How would that work for all of us to shift what are currently our premiums and copays into taxes that could be more fair and more predictable, and might be a burden on folks? So how would that need to be structured, and work through those details together?
Continue again with Councillor Bowen. Just a general question on will you support legislation to protect the rights of our LGBTQ plus community, and specifically transgender youth?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will support legislation that protects any of our rights, because we do not have rights if they don't extend to all of us. And I think it's important in this kind of conversation to just say out loud that, LGBTQ plus members of the Beverly and Wenham community are not asking for different rights or protections than all of us believe we enjoy. They are asking to not be targeted for those rights to be taken away. And so I will absolutely support legislation that provides the support people are asking for. And I will support legislation that protects any of our universal rights. And specifically for trans youth, who right now are experiencing the highest rates of mental health crisis and suicide attempts, I get back to what I said about education. Like, we need to be looking out for all of our kids. That is what matters most. And so while kids are feeling like members of their community are trying to dehumanize and exclude them, we as community leaders need to be as loud as we can in saying that all kids in our community are safe and are welcome and are loved and will have the support and the services that they need. So I am proud to have been able to stand alongside LGBTQ plus neighbors. I'm grateful to be in a community where we look out for each other, because at the end of the day, we keep each other safe, and we need to continue doing that.
Yes, that is my first answer. Absolutely. And you're right, we should be protecting everyone's rights, regardless of their age, their race, their gender. It doesn't matter. The right to the pursuit of happiness is key. But to protect a group that has been targeted, it feels like they're not feeling safe in the system, and I've heard that. I've heard Dr. Morgan, there was an email that came to us as counselors that there was a student who was not feeling safe in the city because of the transgender, or because of their sexuality, whatever the case may be. We need to create a safe space for them. 100% absolutely agree with that. Look, my sister's gay, and I recognize that when she was a teenager, she had issues trying to figure that out, her own sexuality. And truthfully, it was hard to see her really having to hide that. I mean, this is going years ago now. Fortunately, we are a state that recognized gay marriages at the beginning, but specifically with transgender children, I know there's an instance that I will bring up that specifically started here at Ayers. And in the middle school, my son, one of his classmates, realized that they were transgendering, that they realized that they weren't in the right body. And so the school spoke to the students and actually asked them to make sure and make them aware of this. So my son came home to me, and I think it was 7th grade, and said, "Dad, this is what's going on. It's so-and-so." I said, "Okay." He said, "Well, we've known him and at this, but what I had to admire was the fact that at the time, he was a he, the parents were embracing it, supporting it, and helping to make sure that this person was able to fulfill what they wanted to do. And so I said to my son, I need you to be aware and actually watch over him, because there are going to be kids that are going to pick on this person. And my son did actually stand up, and I said, I will be willing to take the punishment for you or with you if you are, if you do something that's right. So yes, 100% I would support any of the trans, especially youth.
So starting again with Councilor Rotundo, wanted to get your stance on last year's ballot initiative to audit the legislature. If you're for it, how do you see advocating for it at the state level? And if you're not, what's the alternative for gaining transparency and confidence in state government?
So of course I support transparency. Look, as a city councilor, we're required open meeting laws. We have to have everything posted out there. If Council Bo and I sat on the same committee, we would have to be careful on how we talk to each other in private, or being out in a public environment. We need to make sure we're mindful. So why it's not extended to the State House, that's something that they're trying to fix. I know that the House is working towards getting at least votes posted online. So that's a step forward. I do not support non-disclosure agreements, the NDAs that exist currently. I definitely think that something should be looked into. So as legislative is being created, as they're looking to work through their House rules, there's also a constitution piece of it as well that we need to be aware of. And that's the other piece of this transparency that needs to be make sure it's worked out. But I know that the Senate currently, in their rules, are working towards getting their votes online, but I know the House is getting into that direction. I will continue to advocate and push for that because, like I said, I'm already following those rules as a city councilor. And I could never understand is why all these other boards were, but yet the state legislators and the governor were exempt from it. So to me, it's sort of like calling the kettle black.
This one's definitely a hot button issue. I've heard a lot about it. And like about 70% of our state and our district, I voted in favor of question 1. I support more transparency any way we can get it. And I know, unlike the question on the Medicare for All bill, where I know where my personal opinion is, but would want to hear where the whole community is at before becoming a champion for something, this is one where this district has spoken. I know that you, on balance, a vast majority supported that that question when it was put to us on the ballot. And so I will absolutely advocate for an audit and any form of transparency that we can bring into the State House. And I know that saying something different from State House leadership makes us all nervous. And I know there are ways to advocate for something that don't burn bridges, that don't make it impossible to be productive on other topics. So you've seen me do this already on the City Council. When I was on the Charter Review Committee, even before being elected to the Council, we had a question about how our city audit is performed and the role of the City Council versus the role of the Mayor's office. And I pushed really hard for the independence of that audit. We made edits to the city charter to protect that. We have an audit committee that started meeting within the last couple of years and has already led to awarding a contract to a new auditing firm for the first time in a long time. And that has not prevented me from working very well with our mayor, with fellow councilors on a whole host of other issues. So I'm confident that we can build more transparency into state government and get things done.
Okay, so we have one more question before we get to closing comments, but I think to kind of change to more of a just getting the tone in a positive light for the rest of the race. As you both work together on the City Council, if you could just describe one thing about your opponent that you admire. Start with Hannah.
Yeah, so I really enjoy working with Councilor Rotundo over these last 2 terms, and I really admire the way he champions the needs of this neighborhood and the needs of Ward 1. I hear them loud and clear. As an at-large councilor, it's really important to work with all 6 ward councilors, and I always know I can count on Councilor Rotundo to be a strong advocate and ask for what Ryalside needs and bring those things to the floor. We've collaborated on issues, and it has been a pleasure to work with him. And I think it's really positive to kick off this year. You know, there's been a lot of division. We talked about some of it in the city in an earlier question, certainly floating around at the national level. But I think it's really important that, you know, people who respect each other are running for the same office because we have, you know, things we want to offer and we respect each other through that process. So I appreciate that this question is part of this forum, and I appreciate Councilor Rotundo's work for this neighborhood, for the council, and for the city.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, there's a couple of things, but one particular is I do want to, she does have excellent writing skills, the many resolutions she's written, although not always agree upon of the context of it, but she does have a discerned presentation of what she wants to do. I am going to add one other thing, which I know you said only one, but I want to kind of just highlight is, Councilor Bowen and I worked together on the Beverly Bicycle Pedestrian Action or Advisory Committee, where, it was brought to me years ago, even before becoming a councilor, and when I came on, I would always see Councilor Bowen walking throughout the city. So to me, it made sense. So I asked her to come join me, and we wrote this, this actual ordinance that created it, and so it was great to work with her on that. We're now doing walk audits. The work is still doing. I'm still heavily involved with the chair on this, but it was really the start to work and collaboratively work with Councilor Bowen on that, so I do want to thank you for that.
Okay, so that's kind of the end of the formal questions. So at this time, we'll actually just hand it back to you, Councilor Rotundo, for just some closing remarks, just anything we didn't cover and anything you wanted to say before we leave.
Is it timed? I will be respectful, but I want to follow the rules.
I think we've got a good 3 minutes.
All right, well, I may not use it all. But anyway, so, again, I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank the Civic Association for hosting this forum. It's a great way of getting the opportunity to know the two candidates that are running for the Democratic primary. I am going to ask for your vote, your support. It's April 15th, tax day, unfortunately, but you won't forget it. I will be out there still knocking on doors, and we'll be out there standouts and holding signs, and I'll be, asking for you to come behind me and walk and work with me. I've had 30 years of experience as a business owner, as a city councilor, as a community activist, as a PTO president, as the Civic Association president, sitting here where Nathan's sitting right now. I get things done. I get good things done. If someone asks me to do it, I do it. If I don't know where to do it or how to get it done, I find that person to get it. That's the experience that I'm going to bring to the State House. I'm going to be able to hit the ground running for these things that are affecting Beverly right now. I also have been able to create relationships with Paul Stedman from the Mass Department of Transportation. I've worked with Representative Paracella, who's now our judge, but as well as Senator Lovely and other former state representatives. I've had those relationships that I've built for years. They've been that I've had there. I will continue to have those relationships, those friendships, and those connections that will allow me to get things done in Beverly. I will promise you that I will continue to communicate out to you guys, whatever means we use, but I will always be responsive to your calls because my goal is to be your representative. I represent you to be your voice at the state level. And so again, I ask for your vote April 15th. Thank you.
All right, the timer is on. So I also want to close with my thanks again to the Ryalside Civic Association, to all of you for being here, and all of you who are following and getting informed about this special election race, and to the other candidates for being here and being part of the race so that we have choices. Yeah, I have absolutely loved and been so grateful and honored to be able to serve you all on the City Council as an at-large councilor. You have trusted me with your deepest fears and your painful complaints and your most creative ideas for the city. And it is really powerful to see that and to work with you. I am running to represent us at the State House because I trust you to be there with me, to keep coming with all of those ideas and to be part of our state government along with me. And I have been committed to public service, advocacy, healthy approaches to conflict and negotiation my whole career. And I am asking for your vote based on what you've seen me do in that career and in our community. So I'm asking for your vote based on the hard questions that you know from experience I will ask, and for the honest answers that you know from experience I'm not afraid to give, and for the different perspectives that I will ask for and try to understand, and for the effective leadership that you have seen from me, from the hard work that you know from experience I will put into this job like all the jobs before it. And I have been honored to have Beverly friends and colleagues and mentors endorse me and support me and share ideas with me in this race so far, based on how we've worked together in the past and what we all want to see going forward. My work here has also been recognized by state partners that our state rep will need to work with in order to achieve Beverly and Wenham's goals in a body that represents the whole state. And that includes the AFT Mass that I mentioned, the Environmental League of Mass, who are key partners on climate, the Mass Alliance, the Sierra Club. We're rolling out some more this week, and I don't want to get ahead of the comms team, the VTA that shared their endorsement today. These are critical allies that I can't wait to work with to bring some of the best ideas to the state. Even though we're in really challenging times, we don't have to be limited by that. We can do what we want to see happen for Beverly, for Wenham. We can do that at the state level. And so I am humbly asking for your vote on April 15th, based on my track record, putting my community first, being a leader who listens, and being a fierce advocate for our needs.
Well, thank you both, and I guess one more time before we all depart, I want to thank BevCam and John for coming to shoot this tonight. We can all thank Luigi in the back for staying late and setting up tonight. Once again, it's April 15th is the primary, and then also keep on your calendar, it's May 13th is the general. And please also take a chance after tonight to go to ryalsidecivicassociation.org, become a member, come to a meeting and join. Thank you all again, and just give one more round of applause to our two candidates for joining us tonight.